Hello, everyone, and welcome to Cloud Lunch and Learn session of the day. I'm Elhan, and I have Martin as well. We are going to be your host for the day. Before inviting everyone for a specific session here, I want to thank you, everyone, for waiting a little bit. We had some technical glitches in the beginning, but we are working through that. So let me invite everybody to the studio. Hey, hi, Leor. Hi, Martin. How are you doing, guys?
Hey, good. How are
Hi.
you?
Yeah, I hope all is good. Yeah, it was a bit, hectic start for the session with all these authentication issues, but we are, living in this remotely connected world, right? So this type of things we have to be ready and handle that when it comes. It's just a matter of time when it will come. It's not about it will never come. So from that perspective, we have a specifics. We have our speaker, Lior. So welcome to Cloud Lunch and Learn, Lior. How are you doing?
Good. Doing well. Early here in the San Francisco Bay Area, but
Nice,
all ready to
nice.
go.
Great, great. I'm joining from East Coast, so I'm like 3 hours behind you, but I believe it's evening for Martin, right, Martin?
Yeah. For
Okay.
me, it's now the dinner time basically.
Okay. Right. Yeah. That's awesome. So we'll have it's a lunchtime for me, it's a breakfast for Lior, and it is a dinner time for Martin. So we can start, right? We can start digging into that.
Yeah.
But before but before doing that, Lior, would you like to share your kind of slide, the session that you want to have?
Sure.
Please bring that and
I can do that. So can I just share my computer to do that, or should I just
yes, you
actually?
can. Yeah, you can do it on your computer. There's
I'll
like
just
this
share my
plus sign,
screen. I think that
and
would
I
be
will greet everyone in the chat.
cool. I think that would be easiest. Can you guys see the? Okay, cool. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes, let's bring that to the studio.
Cool.
Yeah, here we go.
Cool.
Here's the screen. So without any overdue, we would like to bring this. Stage is yours, Lior. So before you start, is there like any hobby, any specific kind of fun stuff that you are doing apart, work and technical?
Yeah, for sure. Fun is always there, especially in those crazy times in the last few years, or
Yeah.
especially a few months or a few weeks, depends how you look at it. So maybe a little bit of background in general. Should I start with that?
Yeah.
Cool. So yeah, I've been doing data platforms for a while. Been in different enterprise companies, most notably probably AWS. A lot of time in data platforms in general, observability, and building a lot of data intensive platforms. In the last 5 6 years, been doing more startups, and today on sales speak in the last 2.5 years, we've been doing a lot of stuff that I would love to share a lot about the technical, and how we actually make AI more human, or at least more interesting to speak with. That's kind of the talk, and there will be a lot of how do you do evals, how do you do all of that. And I'll be happy to, if you guys have questions, or to be more specific about specific topics, would love to deviate a little bit. Yeah, that's pretty much that.
Your presentation does not reflect with your background. I must be honest with you.
Yeah.
We
That's
still,
so
yeah, we
fast.
still see human there, right? What
Yeah,
up?
Good thing we have virtual backgrounds, otherwise you'll just see
yeah,
the
yeah.
camera.
That's true. That's true. Indeed,
uh,
nice.
uh,
Nice. So I think we can kick off. Elkan, Lear, the stage is yours, mate.
Yep.
So we'll be
We'll be
here in
sitting
the
here.
background. If
Yeah,
some
we'll be sitting.
AI agent attacks you, we will be here to defend you. So you don't need
Yeah.
to worry.
Good. And yeah, so definitely feel free to jump in, and we can dive more deeper, more technical into a few things here. The idea here is that I really wanted to kind of talk. I know there's a lot of technical constructs we'll of course cover, and is for a technical audience. But to start from the basic problem that we're trying to solve, which is there is no more do that like if X then Y, right? So we kind of out of all this era of trying to make if and conditionals, and especially what we're trying to do, and I call it sales agent, but it's actually like a lot more like how people that come to understand something about products. So we as developers, we come to the dev tool website, we don't understand anything, and we try to kind of there's a lot of blurb, a lot of stuff that we're not really sure how it will work for us, for our use case. And that's kind of what we were coming to solve in SalesPeak. So especially for technical audience, an AI that can really help you understand why is it good for me. That's very high level, but when we're really getting into it, we're really trying to think how conversation will not feel robotic, will not feel transactional, will actually be interesting and will help you to get to where you want faster, right? So this is different than what we usually do with code assistants. And I think it's actually a very interesting problem, and I'll get to it in a second. But basically, it's not just correctness. There is a lot about behavior, right? So how do we make it fun or at least helpful to speak with one of those agents, right? So there is also, of course, getting job done, but there's a lot on the nuances of human behavior as well. So that those are kind of the topics. I hope that will be interesting. So just in a general, I won't dive too much into it, but basically trying to go over what does buyers when they come to your website, or buyers when they interact with a company, what do they want? So there is a lot of about not feeling being sold to, right? They want to get too pushy, how to feel guided, how to continue across different touch points. There's a lot of that, and I won't want to go into that too much. But in general, what we started from and the core product we had is how you have a chatbot or a chat widget. So different way to chat. It can be, by the way, video, can be voice. I just want to like start with text because it's easier to explain everything in the end. You can translate into text in a way. So how can we make this for be fun to speak with and to actually have a good experience for the buyer, right? Not talking about how many conversions it does it able to sell? Not at all. Just how can we make it fun to speak with? How can we make it informational? How can we make it not hallucinate? And we'll get into all of that correctness even further. Yeah, so that's kind of we should be like trained reps. It's intent aware, goal oriented, and actually different companies have different ways to do it. So we really try to say we don't build chatbots, we build intelligent conversational, and the idea here is in this talk is just to explain what does it mean to have intelligent conversational agent, right? So what does it mean not just to have I want an answer to a question, but I actually want to have an intelligent conversation. And that has a lot to do with goal, like what I try to do. It's trying to understand. So the system needs to understand what the intent, even without me telling it, where maybe it has different signals, right? So that's why we build this, all the context engineering things we're going to talk about. There's different data. How do we engage with this data in the right moment to the AI to actually drive us to where we want to go? Okay, there's a lot of state involved, of course, and so on, like memory, all of those stuff, and we can go deeper into each of those. Okay, cool. So just one more intro here is what does it mean to be a human sales agent, right? So when you do a demo call with a company, you don't just start by asking it, oh, do you support X, do you support Y, do you support this, right? So usually what you see the human sales agents will do, and there's a lot of sales 101, a lot of books to read on that. How do we actually have to do like discovery? So how do you diagnose what's the customer pain point? How do you actually let the customer speak first? And there is a lot of those sales 101 that we're trying to put into the conversational agents, right? So how do you read signals? What does it mean in human signals versus machine signals? What does it mean to do diagnose first? Like how much can you actually ask or wait for the customer to express what he's interested in? And how do you manage state, of course, with different time, right? Memory, which is more easily to explain. Yeah, so curiosity, structured qualification, there's a lot of stuff going on here, but in the end, we want to take this into our system, right? So that's kind of the problem we're coming to solve. How do we translate curiosity into a prompt, into a context that helps the AI to actually perform that? Okay. And of course, moving from the scripted, there's flows. You used to go to some website and kind of say, oh, are you looking for X, Y, and Z? You choose. There's form, right? The type form kind of flow versus something that is actually giving you the to express yourself and being more human. And we said human means more discovery, letting you discover your pain points, not a strict flow, because all those strict flows, of course, goes away very quickly. Okay. Um, and it is, yeah, I don't want to spend too much time here, but discovery is a big part of all of that. Okay. So just to emphasize about this, what is the diagnosis before prescribing? Like, how do you actually, an AI really loves to answer, right? So if you ask it a question, it will just answer. But actually, in sales, and not just in sales, in discovery in general, there is a lot of context you actually want to get first. So if somebody asks you, do you support Salesforce? It's not just asking, oh, yes, of course, we support Salesforce, and give a bucket list of all the different features and give you links. It works to some extent. It's a level one, I would say. But the real reason is to ask him the real benefit is to actually ask, what are you trying to solve? What do you want to connect? To get more information, to do this kind of discovery. And this discovery can be, per feature, just to understand better what you are trying to solve to better serve the end user. Okay, so that's kind of a lot of things here about the discovery. And there's a lot going here, and I just want to kind of make this structured reasoning, understand why we actually try to build reasoning and how we actually build different reasoning. So this is kind of like when you're looking on model reasoning, and maybe we can get a little bit into the technicalities here, is you can actually, when you know the domain better, you can actually make the reasoning more structured. And you can say, okay, where are we in the conversation? What do we already know? And summarize this every time before you try to answer a question. So you first try to, you kind of structure the reasoning, and you can do it in like, let's say, a very long JSON response, right? So JSON response is not just, you just not answer the user question. You actually ask the AI to first analyze what's the conversation state. Are we still in discovery? Do we understand the pain points? What are the follow-up questions that might need to get asked? What is the conversation length? Let's say, what's the feeling? Maybe he's feeling already frustrated or not. So there's a lot of model discovery. So where are we in the conversation? It can help you do it, and we do it with the structured reasoning, right? So you kind of say, first, I want to analyze X, Y, and Z, and it is a graph. And we'll talk about line graph. I will mention it a little bit how we do that. But so that's kind of a hint into the structured reasoning. Yeah. So again, kind of trying to visualize the structured reasoning and what does it looks like, what this architecture looks like, what is the next move, how do we capture the context. So each of those, how we store the pain points, budget, time, and authority, like all of this is very specific to this domain. And then you can think about this, by the way, in any domain that you're doing. How much is the context versus the different discovery and reasoning? So again, you can always use a model that does reasoning, but we found out that actually doing your own reasoning, like different steps that output specific structured output, we save it as JSONs with every step, helps us a lot. So we can do a lot of logic. So again, we can help the model not to need to calculate every time, like the gaps, right? So if we already identified gaps, we save it, and then it's part of the context. So we can kind of do ifs and massage the context that the AI gets based on our logic that we already understand the domain better, right? So we can say, okay, for this type of discovery, for this type of step, for this type of context, we actually want to encapsulate this in that prompt, right? So we actually do a lot of that, and we choose different agents based on that, okay? Different models based on that too. Okay, so now diving a little bit on the how to, right? So how does that all work together? And there's a lot of iterations that we did around this, and of course, it's every month you do another iteration. But today, most of what we do in the architecture is using LangGraph, and I do put it together with LangSmith because, to be honest, I really like the observability here, and we are going to talk a lot about the evaluation, the traces, how we actually bring this into production, how we actually make this an intelligent way to systematically improve, right? So the title of this is how to systematically improve this. and how we actually make it more human, right? So this is what we want to evaluate all the time. So the basics here is the model, different agents, different models based on a state machine. So we try to say what are the nodes, what do we call in each step, what are the edges, how do we do that, when do we actually do enrichment, right? So somebody tells us he's from X or from industry Y. How do we do enrichment on that based on and this is all, of course, very customer specific. So every org, every tenant has its own knowledge base and has its own instructions to follow, like based on different signals and based on different domains. Okay, so in the end, it's a mix between a graph, right? So you kind of have ifs on the state of the conversation, right? So and calling AIs, of course, right? So you have, and you see it very in most AI applications, right? You have kind of the router, it's sort of the orchestrator, if you want to call it, right? The orchestrator with some guardrails, and then moving into different steps along the way. And those steps are, do we know, for example, we have a discovery AI, we have a support AI, we have a qualification AI. So it depends. It's trying to classify you to which step are you. So if you already understood your pain points and you're just trying to schedule a demo, the AI context should be very specific. It should not be the same one as an AI that tries to answer a support question. And it's not supposed to be the same. And I'm saying AI, it's a combination of prompts and a combination of models, and those do differ in the different phases, right? Because there are different trade-offs, and we can cover those as well, right? Between latency, how much you wait, versus how much you really want to look into your knowledge base, right? So if you try to qualify, you possibly need a different knowledge base than actually trying to answer a support question. And even the response format, right? The response length could be very different in the terms of the different agents. Yeah, so that's also, again, different agents, and those can be added. But the important thing is how we actually see if it works. And the reason is it's actually very interesting to see the variance is huge across customers, across use cases, across users, right? Because we, in this wonderful world of chatbots or chats interaction in general, you really cannot anticipate what will be the next question. Or there's from trolls that just try to troll the system and asking, who's the US president, to people that actually ask 40 questions about very specific features, and you want them to be, and you want to be intelligent in all those cases, right? Even if somebody tries to troll it, you still want to answer it very nicely and how to really direct it to the right direction. So Langsmith, and you can see it as an extension. There's a lot of observability tools. Again, Langsmith just works very easily with LangGraph, as you would imagine, the LangChain ecosystem. But the important thing here is actually how you can evaluate. Again, it's, of course, you get all the table stakes, right? The cost, the latency, the errors, which is table stakes. It's very important, and it does help a lot when you're doing, especially when you're doing LangGraph, when there's a lot of ifs that you don't know how they will react in real life. And for example, we had a lot of issue. So for example, we run it on serverless on AWS Lambdas, and we had a lot of issues with like cold starts and different models and different areas in the code that had different cold starts. So this is very important to say. It's not just and actually, what do you measure, right? So there is the first token, because if you stream things like the first token latency versus the full response, so there's a lot of things to the table stakes. But what I really wanted to talk about is the traces and actually how you can actually evaluate those, right? So, and this is very important. What do we actually know? So if you have 1,000 chats per day, or even per month, doesn't really matter. You don't have the time to go ahead and review it. And to be honest, it's actually very, very hard to review it, right? Because you are not the product expert for those questions. You don't know how in customer X Salesforce is being supported. You have no idea if that was a good answer or a bad answer. And more than that, you don't even know, it's really hard to know how was the user frustrated or not. And people were trying to do those things with the human feedback, right? Trying to, hey, thumbs up, thumbs down, all of these things, which didn't really work because the amount of people that actually give you feedback is very low, and they tend to be very pessimistic, right? So the people that actually give feedback, they usually give you thumbs down. That's human psychology. Yeah, so really trying to have this as a loop that we can understand and score. So, and I'll go into this in a minute, but the idea here is how to use LLMs to score. And they score a few things, both the correctness, right? So if somebody asks about your successful integration, did he answer correctly? And we scored that based on your own behavior. So did we answer the same question? If same answer, same thing. Like does the AI repeat itself? Do we feel that the user ended up getting what he wanted, which is sometimes hard, um, but you can have an LLM to try to score it. And for low scores, we actually do some Slack alerts. So we have a dashboards and so on, but we do Slack alerts and then have a human to review those. And we started lately actually to create a prompt submit, right? So we use a Claude to actually suggest a prompt that can fix this problem. Now, it doesn't always work, and there's trade-offs, right? Because you cannot just say, oh, okay, now let's treat this and that. But since it has the context of what went wrong and what was the context of the AI that he gave that, so we can do this analysis. So this Slack channel is actually very interesting for us and get us really ahead. So let me try to, yeah. So I talked briefly about that, and I know people are talking about this a lot. So, right. So, what are the selection trade-offs between different models? And there's a lot of. Yeah. Let me try to.
Hey, Leo, I just discovered that your video is actually frozen. Um,
Oh, okay.
now it's unfrozen. Actually, I see that it's unfrozen. Just want to make sure that it's, and it was same on the YouTube. I think it's fixed now, right? Martin, can you double check that just to make sure we are getting actually this?
Maybe I need to switch my Wi-Fi.
No, you don't have to. I believe
Okay.
you are now pretty good, and Martin just verified that. Thank you, Martin. So go ahead. We just want to make sure that whenever you trying to explain
Yep.
some, users can also see your expressions. Thank you.
Okay. I hope. Let me know if there's. I'll try. Cool. So the model selection trade-offs is tough and it's always changing and it's a never-ending fight for sure. Again, the most important thing is to be able to evaluate it and try to see if there is a problem with it. So it's practically impossible to change and to try to do this trade-off. So there is a new model coming off, and you don't want to miss out the good things about it. And it happens, very very often. But if you don't have the loop of actually evaluate, actually to see does it impact, you have no chance to do that, right? It just takes so long. It can take a month to start doing some gradual deployment, get some hints, fix some stuff. All of those models, of course, are not that compatible, so it's very hard to change if you don't have a good evaluation framework, and that's critical. Yeah, so this is the whole topic. But yeah, I think this is, again, it's very specific to the use case, and it's very important for you to being able to deploy it gradually and to get good feedbacks from your evals. That's the most important thing I think here. Yeah, so that's maybe a little bit here about the thinking. Of course, you can use a thinking agent. It's actually harder to use it on chat and when on real time use cases, and especially if you really want to do something very small. So if the user expects it to be very fast, you really need to put some thoughts here. And as I said before, it's actually easier in cases that you are more familiar with to do the thinking on your own. So you can still do the single LLM call, but if you output like a JSON with different steps inside, so the steps are the reasoning and you force the model to first think about those different steps, you can actually cover a lot here and you don't need that multi-step reasoning on the deeper agent. So that's one way to think about that too. Okay, so I talked a little bit about this, about why observability is non-negotiable, and how we do evaluation. There's a lot here. I can try to, I will skip about this because I think we already talked about it, but just mentioning, of course, hallucination is always a problem for us.
And Leo, excuse me for interrupting, but your video again froze. Now it actually came back. So do you know if you have a network just
Let me
switched
try
between?
to reconnect for a
You
second.
want to check that? Yeah. Now you are back live. You are not frozen. Yeah, once you switch that, network, just let me know. And your audio is coming fine, and your slides are also
Okay,
your.
maybe now. I hope I
Now you
fixed
are
it.
not frozen. I hope it will stay like that.
Yeah.
If it
Okay.
returns back, I will, pop up again. All right. Thank you.
So thank you. Sorry
Thanks.
about that.
All right.
And I
No
switched
problem.
Wi-Fi.
All right.
Hopefully that will be good. Okay. Cool. So all of those tools, all those, this is kind of like things to note. Very common, like latency spikes. Don't things you will usually see, latency spikes and silent hallucinations.
Leor, sorry, I hate to interrupt you. Each
Yeah.
time when I disappear, your video get frozen. I don't know what's happening.
Let me
Each
move
time I
them.
remove myself from the screen, your video get frozen. So what we can do here is that my video will be on, and I'll
Okay.
mute myself. Let's see. Hopefully it would not froze your video. Maybe it's something in the platform Slack. I don't know, but just want to make
Okay.
sure that it's there and you are getting quality here. Thank you. Um, I will
Okay.
be in the background
So
muted.
if it still doesn't solve it, I'll move to another place, maybe with a bit more Wi-Fi. Okay. Um, cool. So just to do this flywheel, right, between how we collect conversation, label failures, add to this evals, monitor metrics, it's very important to have that. And this actually comes in two flywheels. One is just taking those conversations and, as I said, kind of eval them using LLM as a judge. And then we take that from production and turn them into a data set, right? The data set that we can actually run offline as well, because we want to have it in two phases. One is on a regression test that we can run on our environment, so we can make sure that we don't do regressions, right? So we change a model. We want to see that we have those evals, and those evals needs to be in a human language. Hey, do we still have the score, or do we did, like, if we run it on 20 conversations, the total score is not changed, and we didn't see guardrails or um, more human behavior, like we don't repeat ourselves in answering, all those things. So both in regression and on prod. So we use that bugs that we found to actually create a regression test and being able to have this data set that comes with us. Okay, now I want to change gears a little bit. There is So I talked about conversation, and I'll get back to him in a second. But I want to dive deeper into the RAG quality, right? So it's a pretty common theme to people that try to cover. Many times it's okay. It's trying to do a search problem, right? So it's you have a big database of docs or a book that you're trying to chunk, and we're trying to see, did we answer correctly. Now, it's nice, but it's actually not what you want to do in many cases. So to find the right paragraph in a book is one problem, but um, in many of the cases, it's actually deeper. So you want to understand, is the RAG itself, is does it have the right data? Right? That's important. And how do you score on that? So you put a book is easy. The book, all the data is in the book, right? So there's nothing more than that. But if you come to a docs site, right? So for developers, it's easy to grasp. There is a doc site. You put an agent on it, but can you actually know that what is missing? So if somebody asks something and he got an answer, many times it will hallucinate if it doesn't have the data, and that's the hardest thing. It's not about how we pull. It's not about how we retrieve that, but actually does it have the information that we want to do to show. And this is actually what we so if you take it even to a company or to a product rack. So how do we actually say it's more about just scoring the RAG quality? I will actually say for us, it's how do we actually score the information you have in your database, in your knowledge base, in your RAG. And we kind of took an approach that I think is interesting. That is called WKYT, what, know, why, think. So it's basically trying to go into depth about what it knows. And I'll give an example. So let's say pain points, right? So you're trying to understand what is the pain point of that your product solves, right? And usually your marketing team or sales team have it kind of in one slide. Oh, we know how to improve your CI/CD X and Y. Great, but so good. So if somebody asks what's your pain point, and nobody asks what's your pain point, right? Somebody's coming to say, I have this pain point, I have this problem, what can you do? So that it's what pain points, but then you actually have the information to the solution, right? So how do we solve each pain point? And from this pain point, actually, is it different from different personas? So if you're so maybe if you're asking, do you have a way to solve? I actually need to ask, wait, we do, but who are you? Who is the persona that we want to solve it to? Because that also differs, right? Because if you ask me, how does this product helps a RevOps or a CMO, I have a different answer for this. So that's kind of how to break down. And this is going back to the score. This is actually how we score those things. So it's not enough to have, oh, I have a pain point. Great. Rad got something and it's pretty relevant. Then good. But it's not enough. We actually try to understand if the quality of those is deep enough. And that's interesting, right? So it's not just do I have the information, but is the information is deep enough to actually answer good answers to humans. Okay, so yeah, that's one. That's about how we look on the knowledge base and trying to give it scores and where to improve. Now, going back to the evaluation itself, how do we actually evaluate the LLM as a judge, right? So this is a bit of a bigger contextual problem than it seems, right? So many times you think, hey, I just have a question and answer. Was it true? Was it not? But if you're really looking into it, every configuration of a chat, of a conversation, has different signals, has different targets, sometimes have different context. And how do you actually do that? So again, this is also a good milestones to improve your agent in general, right? So the company Q&A context, the knowledge base relevance, the instructions, the engagement actions. So it's breakdown into how you model such conversation, but it also means that it needs to know which tools to do guardrails, which tools to call for discovery, and how do you actually judge that, right? So it's a very context-aware evaluation that the LLM as a judge that looks on this needs to know probably 90% of what the AI knew when it answered. Okay, so that's about the context that it needs to know. Yeah, so kind of doing basically some kind of a deterministic checks and a semantic judge. So that's kind of how we try to do that and how we try to improve it, right? So how do we do the issue, how we actually add the scenario to the regression test and actually suggest the prompt. So again, lately we actually try to do it also automatically. So from a low score into a test and into a PR that suggests a prompt change, which has been interesting. It's not always true, but it's been really interesting to speed up things to like get what that could affect. So that's that improvement loop. Okay, so that's has to do with also structured memory. I think this is kind of a derailed context, but because we talked about context, I thought that's important. There is a very long conversation. Now you actually summarize them. This is actually a very hard topic, and I'm sure everybody that messed with it know it's very hard to determine what is important, what's not. The idea here that I was trying to explain is every domain. It's not just a summarization problem, which is hard on its own, but you really have to have this state or this memory of your specific domain, right? So if you know the pain points, you always want them in a summarized mode for every chat, or if you want the open questions or next steps or what you're trying to achieve, which is not the normal summary of a history, right? It's something very specific that goes with you, and that's important. Yeah, human in the loop, as I said, so we do try to create a PR, try to give a human to take a look at it. And it is important because AIs and LLMs is nice, but it's basically a good filter. And you do need an AI, a human in the loop to improve that. Right? So important for us. And that's kind of how it all works. So bringing it all together into one slide. Automatic chat scoring and how does that relevance being calculated? How we do the Slack alerts for low scores so people can actually look at it. There is the human review layer that tries to dive deeper into this. And this is the newer part that actually does auto prompt suggestions and trying to see if there is something, and a low hanging fruit we can actually try to solve in this case. Okay, I think that's actually pretty cool. Um, any questions, by the way, so far? I know I went over a lot here. Um,
Just unmuting myself here, Leo. So I'm looking at the chat. I don't see anything happening now, but your video from time to time get frozen. It's still there, even though I put myself on the camera to make sure,
okay,
if somebody joins, they know that it's not a robot that's speaking behind that frozen picture.
got it.
But overall it's going well. We have like around 5 to 6 live people are joining. I asked in the chat if they have any follow-up questions, please ask them. But while you are presenting this, it looks like you use some type of generative AI to generate your slides. If I'm maybe I'm
Yes.
mistaken, but it's look like, yeah. So what was the process you built this? So at the end, not now, like let me finish your presentation, and then if you can give just glimpse into what was your presentation look like using the Gen AI, and how did you actually check the quality of responses relate to your basically presentation? Back to you.
Cool. Sounds good.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, okay. So I have a few slides now that I want to talk about this, like context, right? Because in the end, it's all about context engineering, and I'm sure you guys heard a lot about this. But it is important both to evaluate and to the actual how it looks. Because in the end, this is what we're trying to improve. Which context we give the AI, in which terms, like what signals, is it too much? Is it not too much, right? So all about that. Should your Claude MD include a lot of stuff or have skills that are loaded on the right time? So that's the basic of our day to day. But the only way to know it is to evaluate it and try to have this regression and running and making it systematically. Okay, so that's the gist of everything. Um, and that's kind of dive a little bit deeper into this, right? So more context, high context. Of course, there's the cost, the token cost. But even if you're like not thinking about this, hold the needle in a haystack problem is the core of what we're trying to solve, right? So you can always say, hey, I have a knowledge base or a database. If I'm trying to search it, I'll get more results. If I give more results to the AI, it actually can be worse. So a lot about that. And I think this is a pretty a very well known problem, but it is important to kind of understand there's also different types, and it gets more interesting. And it again, it's very domain specific, but you really want to get um, the right ways to dial each one of those, right? Is it what's more important? Is it the static context? Is it the dynamic conversation context? Like what actually the chat is being on? And it's actually depends on what you identified on the conversation, right? So all of this can be very dynamic. So you can say in some cases the external context is the most important one. Let's say the CRM data is the most important one when you're trying to write an email about some follow-ups. But when you're answering a question, maybe it's more interesting to know what's the key data points. What is actually interested in so far? So you get a lot more context of how to answer based on that. And it is a interesting dynamic between those. And you should imply the logic that you understand about the domain to what actually comes into the context. And this has the most impact, for sure. Okay. I think that was the gist of that. And again, trying to summarize the key takeaways is evaluations, and how we actually and what makes a good evaluation. So how do we actually do the automatic scoring, the completeness of the RAG itself, trying to understand the context, and how we actually try to detect hallucinations, which is, by the way, it could be maybe some tips here, could be, for example, links. So you can run even like a link detector and try to see if this link actually returns, 200. There's some stuff you can do here very specific to the domain to find more hallucinations and to actually run this against the same knowledge bank and to see how different the answer is. So that's some interesting stuff here. And the human review layer, how to make it, it's based on the task, right? So this is a filter, how many actually gets into here, what's the human review and who should review it, but mostly every morning, you have somebody that looks and trying to improve the system. And again, as I said, many times it's hard, and you do want to serve it as to the end customer, being able to point out content gaps and being able to point out how would their human sales or human person would actually handle this better. And that's whole feedback loop goes into it, and in the end, into a better system. Yeah.
That's great. Actually, we got the question on the studio, Lior. I don't know if you can hear us or not.
Yeah.
So let me bring that question to the studio. So we got it from Bumble Coastland. I believe that's this, the YouTube handler of the user. So thank you, first of all, for joining our session and watching and bring this question. So the question is more about the notes that you are sharing on your presentation. Are they available online, or can you just drop a link maybe on the YouTube chat or to the, to
Sure.
the LinkedIn announcement of Cloud Launch and Learn so we can share it? So your notes are very valuable. That what I see. So there is already one request from the users.
Cool. A lot of
Yep.
lot of
And but in terms of questions, I believe Martin has a lot of questions. He always has a lot of interesting questions. So Martin, giving the stage back to you, sir.
Yep, thank you, mate. Yeah, Leo, first of all, mate, kudos. It's a great achievement, first of all, and it was quite interesting to see. I think we can discuss about this topic. Well, you can discuss, we can just enjoy listening to you, to be completely honest with you, on so many things and interesting stuff. And I think you have, where I found it quite useful and why I'm saying all of this, because I saw that you have used all the latest technologies, but also with the human in the loops, I think brings really very important point in my opinion, and all that stuff. I have some questions in my mind, I must be honest with you. And my first that I'm always asking the people in such a, if I may call it, big project like that, what is the number one now, if you close your eyes, if I may call it like that, and just say, what was your lesson learned from the whole project, if I may say like that? Because we see all of us, I think also using, also Elkan, me, or anyone else that is watching, listening this now or later on, AI agents, AI this, AI that, everything is about AI, but nothing is basically anything else anymore. So that's why I want to ask, only one lesson learned, if I may call it, one most valuable that you think it is at this moment.
Yeah. So definitely context is all that matters. All you need is context. I think that, well, it's hard to do one. I think, and I totally agree. Everything has changed so much, even from last December, right? So how you do those things, how you actually, the core things of how to make the human in the loop and how to make systematically improvements, and agree on the KPIs that you're trying to improve is very important, right? And that's how it's also how internally people feel. Hey, we're making progress, right? So it's not just hey, we're shooting in the dark, we're not sure, we updated this, we updated that, nobody knows, and people feel, hey, did I get credit on this or not? Does it really work? I think this is very hard to answer, especially when it's human, right? So it's chat-based products. If you generate a workflow in the end and it works like a code, you generate a code, it's easier to say, hey, it works, it doesn't. Yeah, so those KPIs and trying to see if there's a graph. Everybody likes graph up to the right, but it is important. Otherwise, you just
Yeah, and now basically great minds think alike, if I may call it like that. But so my next question was already pre-prepared, and I was expecting some type of an answer. Where do you decide, mate, where the humans stop and where it continues?
Very hard. I think so. It's actually easy to answer if the human says, hey, it's too much, I don't have time to do all of that. So it is, in the end, I hate to say it is a business decision, right? So it's okay.
Yeah.
This guy says, hey, I'm looking at it an hour a day and it's good. Like, I like it. I learn from it.
Okay.
Great. We do try, how to productize this. Who should be the one that looks into it? Is it like end customer or is it internally for us? And specifically in our product, we do both, right? So there's a list, there's a internal and there's external, but how to get to the right problems to the right domain owner is a problem, right? So not, it's a hard problem. The content gaps, for example, somebody asked again about the Salesforce integration. who knows how to answer this in the org? How do you route it? It's a problem.
Okay. Okay. On the technical perspective, how did you prioritize, if I may call it like that, for example, thinking cloud with your orchestration, evaluation, human review?
So how do we do it? So yeah.
Yeah, how do you prioritize, if I may call it like that?
So we started, and it depends on we're now in V6, I think, of all of this. Started with a single LLM call, and then made into. So all the evaluation goes async, of course, right? So we just put a message on the queue, and then we evaluate this, and we do it every. So we're not doing it for every session. We're doing it like every 5 minutes for all the sessions happen. So it won't be like on every message, but it will be on the aggregate of those. And again, so starting from single LLM call, went to this LLM with more reasoning, and then have this long graph, multi steps. The part that is, I think, the most important part is the context, right? So what is going between the states? Who's got the context? I think that was, yeah, that's the number.
Okay. And I think the last question is this, because this is a catch, I think, from the slides. So on the RAG framework goes beyond did it answer, if I understand correctly, and in this completeness, specificity, persona depth, or strategic intelligence. In practice, what is the hardest to get right, if I may ask like that way?
So it's a good question. It's actually it's not about the AI to know. It's about actually is there that content available? Because we actually try to tell the customers, do they have it or not? Like, do we see it on their website, or do we see it on their docs that they upload, or whatever? But that's the important part. So can we tell it? And when we evaluate it, can we tell it if it went to this route, right? So the AI could really understand. So it's going both ways. One is just evaluate the database, right? So how do we evaluate we have this information? And that has to do with understanding the domain and getting this right. So pricing, but do we understand pricing? Is there a pricing? Good, but is there a specific pricing for this specific use case that you're trying to solve? And that has those different levels.
Yeah. And what is the next steps, if I may ask like that, related to the whole project?
Cool. So there's a lot of work on the insights that you gather from that, and so what people are asking, can we get some interesting business insights out of that, right? So so we see topics are getting asked, but what can you build to actually make this better? So giving
as a European, if I may ask, where is the data stored?
US West.
Okay, just asking because we in Europe now discussing about the data. I'm just checking. Really nice, really kudos. I must be honest. I really liked how did you explain, but also it was really, if you work a little bit on technical, it's really clear what you have been doing. It's really hard to achieve because it's really a different level, and I think we are all talking AI agents, but we are still not there from my perspective. But you guys have been focused really on this deep dive. Good job, really.
And thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Elkan, mate.
Yeah, really. Yeah, I mean, we have still some time, so we'll grill Lior here before we let him go, right?
Yeah.
So Lior, thank you for a very interesting and engaging session. Literally looking for the quality of answer and seeing, is it good enough? That's, I believe, is really something that businesses actually care about, and they want to have that in their AI implementations wherever it's involved. The only question would be there is that usually for a business process, we also need to differentiate between deterministic answers and non-deterministic, right? So if a business has a deterministic way that they expect answers, it just doesn't make sense to go with, generative AI solutions. You can still use the AI, but it shouldn't be a generative AI solution because that would just mix up the things. You cannot, for example, if you have just to give a simple example, if you have a, specific structure for your billing and you want to create that way, you don't want Gen AI always, creating the different flavors. So that's kind of one thing, right? So that's why we are more focused toward making sure that quality exists in the Gen AI solutions that we are building for our customers. and for mission critical systems. So from that perspective, I believe what you shared was really, really valuable and insightful. But
Yeah.
there are room for growth, right? And while you were working on this solution, I believe there were challenges, some of them you described, but which challenges you find the most hard to overcome or more complex? And, how much progress you made toward that?
Yeah, and by the way, I agree. There's sometimes if you want to pull up a form because you must have those fields, right?
Yeah,
So and it's also I look at it like what does the end user want? Like better for him, right? If I'm going to ask him like 4 questions one after another, maybe I'll just show a form that you say mandatory field, right? And
right.
that's fine, and you can build that too. Always looking at what will be nicer for him. Um, yeah, I think there is a lot. I think we're going to see what I see in the future, and it has kind of to do with that all the agent to agent communication, right? How do all the MCP stuff? How this all comes into when agent asks the questions, and you have your agent asking the question, and then you have more structure in a way. It's still very loose, but still has some structure, right? So you can define, oh, I do want this. Your agent saying, I want this in this structure, and it answers you in the format that you want. Um, I don't know if you guys saw the Microsoft NL Web protocol to kind of how you do. So it's basically like they have a chat interface. It's basically from ingestion from a website into an AI a widget, but it's also exposing an MCP server with a specific schema of how to do agent to agent. So I think that's where the future goes. And so if it's answering it's a bit differently, but to do agent to agent communication with MCPs and making it structured, I think that's where it's going to be interesting.
Okay, great. Yeah, definitely. I think MCP servers are really interesting, but they are. I want to emphasize that they are not going to replace your business APIs,
Yeah.
because if somebody tries to do that, they just digging themselves into a new set of problems till the point that they will start doing that. It sounds like you already had that. So that's why, like, uh, I think as a technical visionaries, who are trying to guide our customers, we need to be very clear about that to our
Hmm.
technical teams, implementation teams, saying that yes, MCP servers are great when you are trying to explore certain APIs that you have no idea, but you have certain things that you are trying to retrieve, and you need to be open to any type of responses based on your basically what you
Hmm.
are asking from the MCP server, but never confuse that with the robust preset API that you use for the, let's say, for the claim processing, or anything that
Yeah.
requires robust data communication between servers.
I actually I totally agree. We all seeing the building the enterprise bus again, but
Yes.
there's so Cloudflare. Cloudflare actually did a pretty cool
Hmm.
about their code mode. I don't know if you guys saw that. So they're doing this MCP to their APIs, but what they're actually doing is not creating a MCP endpoint tool
Yes.
per one, but actually doing a code mode that translates into an API more easily. That was super interesting to see.
Awesome.
Uh,
Yeah. And before we kind of wrap it up, Martin, if you have questions, please bring. But before we wrap this up, I believe viewers who are going to watch our YouTube session, which is going to be recorded and available within 24 hours in our Cloud Launch and Learn YouTube channel, what references, what kind of places you would advise them if they want to dig deeper into the topics that you presented today?
I'll need to look on some. I think there's a lot of like everything long graph, long chain. There's all great documentation there. I like the Andrew NG content
Mhm.
as well about AI in general. Um, yeah, I think that's where I would start.
Great. Awesome. Again, thank you everyone for joining. Thank you, Martin, being a partner in crime on this session with me. Right, definitely appreciate your questions and contributions. And Leo, thank you for very interesting presentation, diving deep into those technical details that Martin brought the questions about, and as well as I believe anyone who will be watching our session later on, they would find it very, very insightful and useful. Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
Thank
you.
you, Lior,
Sorry about the
and
white
good luck.
pages, and thank you very much.
Have a great day. Yeah,
Thank you. Bye.
thanks.